Welcome to Ask Akil, where I can give you my unadulterated hot takes on life here in Japan based on my experience living here since 2004. Today's topic is going to be, what is it like being married to a Japanese woman? Let's get into it. I have 4 points that I think summarize life married to a typical Japanese woman. Of course, it's not the case for everyone. Of course, I'm generalizing based on what I've heard. Three of them are going to sound really negative, but if you stick around to the end, there's one positive one that I want to really talk about. So first off, being married to a Japanese woman is involved. Being married here is way more involved and complicated than life in America because I think there's so many different layers of history here and layers of society that you have to go through in the role as a husband, especially if you're living here. I mean, we have family commitments, we have historical holidays, we have, relatives, weddings, other types of ceremonies, graduations. It's a bunch of stuff that you're going to have to do. And the way I always think about it, and I tell people, basically being involved in the Japanese family is like being in the mafia. Once you go in, you can't get back out. That's it. You're like in a gang forever. Like, blood in, blood out kind of thing. And the events and things that you go to is not like, oh, you go one time, see how it is. That's how they introduce it to you. It's like, hey, just come over, check it out, see what's going on. Nah, buddy, you go one time, you're going forever. Just get used to that. That's just the way it is. I mean, I'm fine with it, but I kind of realized that pretty early in the game, and I just had to know, like, whatever event, group, ceremony, whatever it is I sign up for the first time, I have to mentally prepare myself to plan my life around it forever, basically, until other people around me say it's not a thing. And those things kind of add up as you go along. I mean, now, my one of my kids is in elementary school, so I'm dealing with the whole parents, community of parents type of stuff, and the papatomo, which are like dad friends and other. It's good, I like it, but it's just very different than growing up in America because we have a sense of independence. And some people like me, I'm kind of like a little bit of a loner. I have friends and stuff like that, but in my group of friends, I'm like the one who just runs off by himself for a little. We go out to somewhere, and I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna go that way and just like disappear for a little while and then come back to everyone. I'm the one who like hopped on the airplane and came to Japan. So, I'm more like Wolverine and the X-Men. I'm just kind of like run off and do my own thing. But being in here is very different from my nature. But I had to kind of understand the situation and know what I was signing up for. And that's what I suggest that you do as well. And you just understand that one time means forever. Now, of course, Japanese people are not trying to trick you or anything. And no one's going to like, put you in a headlock and throw you in the trunk to make you go to some weird ceremony. It's not like that. But there is kind of community pressure that you might not feel, but your partner will feel if you choose to ignore it. If you're like, yeah, I'm not in the mood that time, or I'm tired this year, or something like that, unless you have a really valid excuse, just schedule it into your life that event that you went to one time, you're going to have to go to forever. Basically, it becomes like a tradition, if you will, or a part of your life. And again, it's for some people like it, some people hate it. I just think it is what it is, and it's what I signed up for, and I'm totally okay with it. Within those situations, I also know certain roles that I have to fill. Some situations I have certain obligations. Some situations I don't. Sometimes I just literally go to family events. I'm like, okay, I've done my job, and I go on the floor, take a nap, and then I go some places, someone just hands me a drink, and I just start drinking and chilling out. Like, there are other times where I'm carrying like a portable shrine and sweating all day, but I like that kind of stuff. I'm not saying it to like feel sorry for me. It's literally stuff that I like to do. I know it's not for everyone. It might not be for you, but just understand that it is one of the expectations, whether it's said or not said, that it's going to come with being involved with a Japanese family or being deeper into a Japanese community. It's kind of compartmentalized. This, I don't really have any, room for comparison because I came here for so young and I grew up in a Caribbean household. So my life with my family was not the typical American experience at all. But what I mean by compartmentalized is there are certain roles that need to be filled in a Japanese family and a Japanese house. And you wear different hats. Your wife wears different hats as well. So understanding that, so the girlfriend hat that she wore and the expectations of all that, pretty pretty much gets thrown out the window shortly after you get married. Sometimes immediately after you get married, you might wake up and be like, "Yo, who is this person like I'm next to?" It's because that girlfriend hat went off and the wife hat went on, and then the wife hat might go off, the mother hat might come on, or the lover hat might stay on, the businesswoman hat might come on. Like, it's a lot of different hats, and your spouse will kind of compartmentalize those in her life more and more and more, especially after she's married. So understanding what hat she's wearing at what time really reduces both of your stress. And sometimes she might not even realize she's wearing that hat. Of course, not physical hat, but you know what I'm talking about. She might not even realize that she's wearing it, because I think that self-awareness of how they change in each situation is something that a lot of Japanese people don't really have, because it's just like, it's life, it's what people are doing and experiencing. And in general, like, Japanese people don't really think so deeply about why they're doing what they're doing. They're just doing stuff because that's the way it is, and as a outsider in the society, kind of have a little bit of a weird perspective, because I can see some stuff, I'm observing. So it's like National Geographic. I'm like observing some stuff, and I'm like, "Hey, don't you see that?" And they're like, "What? It's a tree. It's a bush. That's what we do." And I'm like, "All right, fine." You just gotta let it go sometimes. But dealing with your partner, understanding that, she's going to have different gears and levers that she's pushing without even realizing it. And you trying to stop her, like, "Hey, slow down. Come on, let's be romantic." And when she's in like businesswoman mode, doesn't really work. Right. But if you kind of are able to match those gears, you can get a little turbo boost. So when it's romance time, it's turbo boosted romance time. When it's, family time, you can kind of come together and form like Voltron and get stuff that needs to be done. But it is kind of a tricky thing. It does depend on her personality. It depends on your personality. It depends on what you want out of a wife, a relationship, and your happiness as well. Again, it really just depends on the person. My situation, okay, it's always in flux. Go through good stuff, go through bad times. I think that's life, that's marriage in general. But I'm happy with my situation. My situation works for me. I can imagine like my situation wouldn't work for a lot of people, just because of the way things are, but I'm happy with it. I think my family, we mesh together, and I think that's the most important thing, finding someone that you can mesh with. But just trust me, it doesn't matter how you talk about it before marriage. That compartmentalization will happen to different levels after you're married, and especially after you have kids. When you think about it, it's really conditional. I think it really is because, traditionally, in general, of course, Japanese society up to this point has been extremely stable. You have the, permanent lifetime employment system that existed in the 20th century. You have seishain system, the regular employee system, which of course Japan is trying to pull itself out of, but we're in this weird kind of space. So, the expectation is that life is kind of constant, and because there's that expectation, that's also the expectation that your wife might consciously or subconsciously have of you, which means like basically like it's kind of conditional on you fulfilling that part of the deal. Like in my image in America, of course, is the root of marriage is based on like love and passion and love making and all those things. But here, it's really more based on the ability to have a stable life for yourself, for your family. And especially as a man, providing that for the family is the primary role. And if that gets disrupted in some kind of way, there are some ripples in the force in some kind of way, all hell breaks loose. Again, generally speaking, but it really depends on the type of woman, depends on the type of person. I've heard and seen it depends on the area as well too. But if you are, that's why I kind of suggest, especially for younger guys, getting their feet on solid ground first, then actually going into serious territory. But like me, I really didn't have that option. I really didn't plan on being here that long. I planned on being here for a year, came up and boop, 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 life happened to me. And I've been rolling with the punches ever since, and finally getting myself on solid ground. But it is a process. It is sometimes a very painful process, and you can't really expect your partner to work with you through all the stages of that process, right? I know I had to grow a lot in Japan, and I had to grow up here basically, and I had to grow up in a process where I was kind of learning on my feet. So just understanding that even though your base might be the love that you have for your partner, more than likely subconsciously, and it happens more than likely after marriage, the societal pressures, family, society, friends, peers, coworkers, colleagues, potential, a whole bunch of other stuff that, again, your wife, your Japanese woman wouldn't even be aware of, will have impact on her, and it could lead to her loving you conditionally, of you checking some of the boxes that need to be checked to provide that stable type of environment for the family, i.e., her and the kids. And that's just the game. That's the way it is. I don't really, I don't hate the game. That's just the way it's played. I just roll the dice. So, however, it's comforting. See, there is something positive. You might think, oh my gosh, marrying a Japanese woman is chaos, it's terrible, is cold, it's heartless. And you might have heard like some of that information online, but I do think it is very comforting. One, because there is a lot of loyalty that goes into a marriage, especially if a lot of the boxes are being checked and a lot of the needs are being fulfilled. There is that companionship, knowing that I don't really have to worry about a lot of the issues I might have to worry about in the States, like, especially like being able to provide in different ways. I think Japanese women do become very warm, very loving, very supportive of you. And that same community that I said is like the mafia can also provide a level of comfort in some ways. In some ways it can, in some ways it doesn't. The way it does is very different from the West, but it is, I think, very comforting if you become accustomed to your role within it, if that makes sense. It's like a beehive, and if you are able to fly with the bees and and collect honey with the bees, and have a little honeycomb, then I think it's very comforting, right? I'm not a bee. I'm very much not in fantasy world believing that I'm a bee. I tried to become a bee, a Japanese bee, if you know what I'm saying. But I know that that's something I will never be. Terrible, but I know it's something I'll never be. But I'm okay with my position here, and that gives me the freedom to do this, like stuff like that. I'm an anomaly here, and because of that, again, I'm able to observe different things and have many wonderful experiences that I would never have been able to dream of. When I was watching, the show, the. From the 90s, a hip hop documentary, and Wu-Tang Clan was here visiting Tokyo, and I was in the movie theater looking at, Raekwon and Ghostface on the bullet train arguing at each other in 1994. So please leave a comment if you have any other questions for me. This is going to be a regular segment that I do. I'm enjoying it. I hope it's helpful. I'll holler at you next time.